Great lawyers don't always know how to build great law firms. Let's change that. Join Ben Gideon as he shares hard-won lessons from building his own financially successful law firm and practical insights from top law firm entrepreneurs, business consultants, and more. This is a podcast for lawyers, by lawyers. Welcome to Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm. Produced and powered by Law Pods.
Today's episode of the Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm podcast is brought to you by Supio. I just spent an hour doing a webinar with the Supio folks. It was great. We had the head of business development and also one of the lawyers from Texas who's been an early adopter of Supio and walked through some case models of how you use Supio to put a case together. It was very, very impressive. I would encourage everyone who doesn't yet have an AI platform for their law firm, if they're a plaintiff's side, personal injury, medical malpractice type of law firm, check out Supio and get the demo. Our podcast today is also brought to you by Vision Spark. Vision Spark is the company that helps law firms and other businesses find seconds in command. You know any seconds in command, Jeff?
That would be me. It's exactly where I want to be.
When I think of number two, I always think of Jeff.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that.
We have Vision Spark to credit for the search process that led us to Jeff, and then Jeff has led us to the holy grail of, it appears, to doubling our revenues in less than a year of your time at our firm. So it's all paid off very well. Anybody who needs a second in command like Jeff, I would encourage you to talk to Vision Spark. Our podcast is also brought to you by 1% for Planet. 1% for Planet, folks, is the organization that allows you to contribute 1% of your gross revenues to environmentally conscious nonprofits. Our firm has done that. It's a great organization that's allowed us to partner with some really terrific nonprofits in Maine and throughout northern New England, and we really would love to have other firms join us in that. And if you do join us in 1%, please reach out to us and we'll give you a plug on the show.
Hello and welcome to Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm. I'm Jeff Wright, Chief Operating Officer at Gideon Asen. And as always, Ben Gideon, owner and partner and host. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Jeff. Had a fun and exciting couple of weeks here.
I'd say so.
At the firm.
Yeah. You want to tell us why it was so exciting and fun?
A couple things. One is we got the highest malpractice or personal injury verdict, and I guess both in the history of the state of Maine a couple weeks ago with the $25 million verdict for our very deserving client. So that was very exciting. It was also a great experience for the firm as a whole because everybody, I think, on our team at one point or another was able to come to the trial and watch. And I looked behind me at closing arguments. The whole gallery was filled with people from our firm cheering us on. So it was a team building and galvanizing experience.
I think to your point, Ben, I mean, you and Merrill did an absolutely fantastic job. And, you know, I believe that case originated either in late 2021 or 2022 with us. And the amount of work put in by the team behind the scenes and to see the fruits of their labor come out in, you know, you and Merrill's in front of the jury and in front of the defense was just incredible, and everyone wanted to be there. So to your point, an amazing team effort.
Yeah, so we had that, and then even better, a couple days ago at our regular Monday meeting, I walked in surprised to see all of our staff came dressed in tuxedo shirts with turned around backwards baseball caps. And it was a very fun moment. I think they were making fun of me, Jeff, but it actually was just a great testament to the sense of humor and family-like feeling we've built here in the firm that people would do something so silly.
Well, as you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery, Ben. So
exactly.
You should feel good about it. But yes, they were making fun of you.
I've got the tuxedo shirt on today, and we've already decided we're going to make this a regular part of our practice. So I know you're very excited about that, Jeff.
I am. From a HR standpoint, which is one of the hats I wear, I'll make sure it's done as appropriately as this team can do it.
All right. Well, with that, why don't we transition into more serious topics here?
Yes.
We've had a bunch of of guests on recently, but I wanted to get back to our trajectory of going through the building of a law firm process, kind of from beginning to current. And the next topic on the list that I wanted to spend some time covering is something we've heard a lot about from many of our guests, and anybody who's in this business knows how critical it is. It's the people that make up your firm, together with the culture of the firm and the concept of core values, the common shared values that the people have that kind of drive your mission forward. So before I launch into kind of my thinking about that and how we approached that when we started our firm and the progression and evolution of that to the current day, I'm curious your take, Jeff, because you've been in a bunch of different business settings, different environments, mostly in the banking sector and now obviously in our firm. Can you just talk a little bit about, from your experience, the importance of the people, the culture, and to the extent this was part of your prior business's core values?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the crux of a successful business is going to be your people and your culture. Most people probably listening to this have been, part of teams at work or part of sports teams, or at some point in your life, you've worked in a team environment, and it's very rare to have, not to use a cliche, but everyone rowing in the same direction, but to have the team fully invested in the work that you're doing and everyone working toward the same common goal. And one thing that I think makes this firm unique is, to a man, every employee, from the legal assistants to the paralegals to the attorneys to the operations staff, all have the same one unified goal: to serve our clients to the best of our ability and to create a culture that is just full of drive to win. And we're lucky enough to have that, and all of our success is going to stem from that.
Yeah, and I have to say that you have a lot of strong qualities, Jeff, as a leader and a manager, but I think your strongest is bringing out the best in our people, recognizing the value of each individual person. They feel supported and recognized by you, and building that team. When we think about what we call the IECU, which is, we call it our core case unit. So IECU is an acronym we created for intake, evaluation, and core case unit, not to be confused with the ICU, which is where you go when you need a ventilator or blood pressure medication.
Or a malpractice attorney.
Right. But in our IECU, which is you've built out really under your leadership, I mean, they function as a very well-formed team with everybody, as you said, rowing in the same direction. People are very positive, helping one another out, mission-driven, seemingly energized and excited about the work and so forth, which is no small feat, because those are really hard jobs, dealing with high volume, dealing with sometimes, angry or frustrated clients that we can't help, and a lot of different challenges that make life a lot easier for our litigation teams.
I was just going to say, probably the thing I'm most proud of with the IECU, and it's a testament to the senior management team, is that division didn't exist before May of this year. So every employee in that department is brand new. And we went through a very well-defined hiring process and took to heart that culture was just as important as their skill set. And the team that we've put together is not only a fit from their skill set standpoint and their intelligence standpoint, but from a culture standpoint. And I think that is the biggest reason for the success, is we've made really good hiring decisions.
Agreed. We've now talked about the end of the journey for us, but I'm going to take it back now, before your time, Jeff, to the beginning of it, because where we are now is very different from where we were when we started. And even the understanding of the critical importance of culture, core values, and people is very different now than it was when we started. So I just want to talk a little bit about kind of the concepts of building a culture and having the right people and having shared core values, those all seem to be nothing more than common sense. And, every business book talks about these things. And sometimes I have the eye glaze factor of, why are you telling me things that are obvious? Everybody knows. I mean, you have bad people, your business isn't going to be successful. You need to have good people. You need to have shared values. Isn't that just obvious to everybody? And it is in a way, but it's actually, despite how commonsensical and obvious it is, it's one of the hardest aspects of your business to perfect, because there's a lot of forces that move you in the opposite direction and don't often make it difficult for you to build or attract the type of people, keep the type of people, and avoid the wrong type of people that you want to have for your business. So the concept that a business is no better than the people that are in it is one that, like I said, appears in a lot of the canon of business literature types of books. One book that I've read, I think, Jeff, you read it as well, and I found it to be extremely valuable, is Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, where he talks about the characteristics of companies that what he really does is he evaluates businesses that have been highly successful and the ones that have failed, and he identifies the distinguishing qualities of businesses that have been highly successful, and really tries to do that in an objective way, not to follow kind of the orthodoxy of intuition or what people perceive, but to actually look at the real metrics. And one of the things he found, and this comes directly from the book, is that the great companies actually didn't distinguish themselves in any way when it came to their executive compensation packages. In fact, the executives at the great companies actually tended to make, on average, a little bit less money than the non-great companies. The distinguishing factor in the great companies was hiring the right people who are driven by an insatiable drive to build something great, not for the sake of money, but because they just, as people, don't know any other way. That's what their DNA wires them to do. That's the kind of people they are. And he makes the point that the purpose of compensation is not to incentivize the wrong people to achieve better results. It's to get the right people in the company. And once you have the right people, you don't need to incentivize them. You don't need to have an incentive system. If you have to incentivize somebody to be driven to work to achieve the mission, then you've hired the wrong people. And one of the common examples that I've seen in the literature is the Southwest Airlines example, where they ask the CEO, because one of the attributes of the culture of Southwest Airlines apparently is, I don't fly that airline much, but is that all of the staff are known for their friendliness, for kind of, sense of humor. And they asked the CEO once, well, how do you create such a friendly, fun staff? And he's like, we don't. We hire friendly, fun people. It's such a simple insight, but it's so incredibly valuable. And I can tell you that we have, over time, learned that lesson repeatedly the hard way. I think that a lot of times when you're talking about the people issue in a firm and the issue of culture, in a lot of respects, it's the proof of its importance is really in the exception, not in the implementation or execution. Because you might not recognize how valuable the culture is when it's working, but the moment it isn't, the moment you have somebody who's toxic to the culture, that damages the culture, that makes other people uncomfortable, that makes them feel underappreciated, that makes them feel unsafe, whatever the way you want to phrase that, you know it immediately. It is immediate and devastating to your business to have that injected into it. And I can tell you, after starting our practice, there were multiple iterations of our firm where that was the case, where we literally had employees say, I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable coming into the office. Somebody else is threatening, makes me feel threatened. So once the culture goes south, you know it right away. When that exists in your business, that really serves to clarify the mind about how critical that culture is, because if that isn't working, nothing else can work.
And how draining is that on your time, Ben, also, to take away what your real focus is?
It is just unbelievably draining, both in terms of the actual time you have to spend to troubleshoot and put out fires with those problems, but also the emotional energy it takes, because you're dealing with fragile emotions with people that are not feeling cared for, not feeling loved, not feeling appreciated. And you're just constantly, it's like you're constantly having to dig out of that hole just to get back on level ground. And it's just so hard to do anything else. And anybody who's run a business knows this feeling, how bad it feels to have that situation. And yet the solution to it seems like it should be obvious, right? But often it's much more difficult than it seems, because you can be faced with having somebody or multiple somebodies who may actually add significant value in terms of their ability to accomplish work and complete tasks, especially when you're just getting off the ground as a newer firm. You rely on every single person there enormously. I mean, when you only have, 3, 4, 5 employees, every one of them is critical. And the thought of losing somebody and then having to go back and to retrain and to refill, and the time and expense it's going to require to do that. So you can rationalize keeping somebody around who is damaging the culture longer than you should. That is always a mistake. And we made that mistake repeatedly in our early days. We kept people longer than we should, damaged the culture. It impacted our other employees. It sent the message that as leaders, we were not willing or able to deal with the problem the way it needed to be dealt in a decisive fashion. So it causes other people to lose confidence in your leadership. It sends mixed messages, because you're saying you value certain things, but then somebody is not fulfilling those values, but yet you're allowing that, you're tolerating it. It's just so toxic in so many different ways. And every time we've ultimately made the hard decision to change, it's always worked out better. And it's always worked out better almost immediately, despite all of the worry about what are we going to do when we lose fill in the blank. Usually within days, if not weeks, you've solved the problem, you've moved on, and it's better. You've had that experience even in your short time here, Jeff.
We have. Yeah, we've made some staffing changes, and we've hired replacements, and as a whole, in my short tenure here, I mean, I'm still under a year. I've been here 11 months. I haven't seen the team work better in my time here as one single driven unit. I mean, we've gone from 12 employees to 18 in 11 months. So, I mean, we've increased our staff by 50% and have a 19th employee coming on right after the new year. We're making very well thought out decisions, but we're not laboring to a point where we're putting them off where it's creating anything detrimental. The culture is definitely shifting away from what you were describing of some earlier challenges you had.
So just to talk a little bit about the concept of the term culture, I was thinking about, it's one of these terms that's thrown around a lot in the business world, not always defined. Well, what does it mean? What is the culture of a business? Wouldn't all businesses that are successful have the same culture? Are you just talking about kind of a positive, friendly environment? When I was thinking about it, and I think about culture, one good analogy would be, I think of like the growth of, let's say, a plant. So in order for plants to grow and thrive, they need certain things. They need sunshine, they need water, and they also need absence of things. They need absence of negative environmental factors, such as ice storms or hurricanes or other things that can cause them to die, even if they had ample amounts of water and sunshine and so forth, right? When it comes to people, they also need things to thrive. And to me, that soil that provides everything people need to thrive, that's the culture. In fact, you call a medium that grows things in like a lab a culture, right? That's another word. The word culture is actually used. So things people need to thrive and survive. Well, they need money. They need love. They need recognition. They need satisfaction. They need personal safety. They want to have hope and optimism. They want to feel like they're among family. They need family. They need connection. They want to have importance. They want to have opportunity. And just like plants, there needs to be an absence of negative environmental factors. You can have all the positive ones, but if you inject negative factors in there, that can destroy all of the positive things that you may also have worked hard to build, right? So that means you need to have an absence of toxic co-employees. You need to have an absence of, monomaniacal, overly narcissistic leadership. You need to have an absence of, oppressive work conditions or whatever the case may be, right? When I think about in law firms in particular, I think lawyers have sometimes historically done a reasonably good job of trying to create that environment for the lawyers, but there's historically been a very large divide between lawyers and non-lawyer employees in law firms. So you can have a firm where the lawyers are well paid and they're getting love and they're getting recognition and they have satisfaction because they're doing professional work and helping people, adding value in certain ways. But the lawyers who are running the institution, if it's run by lawyers, view everybody else as just kind of fungible, interchangeable parts, not in a sense, non-human resources that they're just using and then will discard when somebody no longer can tolerate that environment anymore and, moves on. But there isn't a lot of effort to create the culture that the non-lawyers can thrive in. And I mean, the firm I came from, I don't think it didn't necessarily go out of its way to create an unpleasant environment for the non-lawyer staff. I don't mean that. We did a lot of kind things for the staff in my prior firm. But there was a very big divide in that culture between the lawyers and the non-lawyers. Lawyers got certain recognitions, perks, and autonomy. The non-lawyers were really just treated as hourly rate, fungible employees to a large extent. And it wasn't so much just the pay or the demands of scheduling or things like that. It was more things like nobody ever asked their opinion about the case, or they weren't included in strategy or meetings where there was anything substance involved. It was just that they were there to do the administrative support and nothing else. And I think one of the things we've really tried to do in our firm is to make everybody in the firm feel connected to the core mission and the work that we do. And I'm curious what your thoughts. I mean, there's obviously limitations. Everybody does have a different role. Our legal assistants and intake coordinator are not giving legal advice. They're not practicing law, and they're not going to go to trial and give a closing argument. But that said, within the confines of what is appropriate, we try to involve our staff much more substantively in the mission and the work we do.
I agree with everything you said, Ben. I think if anyone listens to this that either thinks they have a culture or is looking to build a different culture, and your mindset is, well, we're friendly and we're welcoming and we're compassionate and we all get along, okay, that's not a culture. I mean, that's your foundation, that's your basis to work from. I think to Ben's point, 3 things that might define our culture are: we empower all of our staff. We are inclusive, even though, I think a lot of law firms, to what Ben was saying, has a very defined hierarchy. You have the partners, you have the attorneys, you have the paralegals, you have the legal assistants, you have the support staff. Below that, I mean, we're structured like probably every other firm, but there's never a sense of a hierarchy here. And I think the last thing is transparency. And those things, the empowerment, the transparency, and being inclusive, all go hand in hand to building this culture. And everybody, to a person here, feels like their opinion is valued. They feel like they could walk into my office or Ben's office or Taylor's office, either of any of the partners, and have a conversation about an issue or a problem and not feel any hesitation about retribution or that they're stepping out of their lane. Everyone is welcome to give their opinions at every meeting and invited to trial prep meetings and invited to see us in court. And it's just, that is building a culture. It's well beyond we get along, we're compassionate, we like each other, there's no drama in the office. How are you taking the next level to empower your staff? How transparent are you? And we try and be extremely transparent to almost a fault in terms of everyone knows what our strategic plan is. Everyone knows our hiring process. Everyone knows when we're interviewing and what we're interviewing for. There are no surprises. We're doing interviews next week, and the attorneys that we're interviewing, it's not just going to be Ben and Taylor, the partners. It's other attorneys. It's a legal assistant. It's a paralegal that are going to be part of that process, because we want other opinions that we're going to take seriously. And that's a culture. People have probably heard of the $2,000 rule at the Ritz-Carlton. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Ben.
No.
And if I butcher this, I apologize. But the Ritz-Carlton, obviously very famous, very high-end hotel chain, realized that they didn't feel their staff were empowered, and they were having some complaints from customers, and the staff felt like they were not empowered to address the complaints. So the Ritz-Carlton has this unwritten rule, and it's called the $2,000 rule. And every staff person there, whether it's a front desk person, the hotel manager, whoever it is, has carte blanche to spend $2,000 of the hotel's money to address a guest issue at their whim. And when they instituted this rule, when they look back, the average amount that employees spend is $100. And even though they have $2,000 to spend, and it's small things, and some of the examples are, a guest's daughter left their favorite stuffed animal in the room, and the staff person spends $60 to overnight it back to them. And it's those little things that has helped to build that brand and empower their staff. And it's just, it's a great example of how empowering your staff can be so beneficial to your company and the firm if you do it the right way.
No, it's a great example of that. And, we, like Jeff was saying, when we were preparing for our recent trial, we had multiple mock openings. I did closing. We had all of the staff there. And the most valuable feedback we get is from the non-lawyer staff. Of course, they're much more akin to what a juror is going to be like. You're not going to get a lot of lawyers on the jury, but so it's valuable to us to have that. But I can tell that people really enjoy doing that because they recognize that they're part of the firm's core mission to serve our clients and to get those results. So even if, our intake coordinator may have spoken to the client, and that very first phone call that brought the client into the firm and then transferred that person over to a lawyer and never had any further contact, they are part of the journey that our firm has taken with that client to get them from somebody we never met and didn't know to, the $25 million verdict we got for that client. And everybody and every link in that chain is critical to that. And I think people feel that, and they are excited and motivated by it.
Need help on a complex personal injury or medical malpractice case? Gideon Asen accepts case referrals and regularly co-counsels with lawyers nationwide on high-value claims. The firm has recovered millions of dollars in cases that competitors turned away because they dig deeper. Ready to learn more? Email bgideon@gideonasenlaw.com to start the conversation. Gideon Asen shares fees as permitted by the laws of each state. Don't let complex cases overwhelm your practice. Elevate justice together with Gideon Asen.
So that gets me to, the concept of culture, I think, we've defined well, and it's so critical. But the place where the rubber meets the road for culture is in what I realized was in the concept of core values, because the way you create the culture you want, like the Southwest Airlines example, you don't hire people and then make them friendly. You find friendly people. You find the people that share your values and you hire them. Then they don't need to be taught your values. They already come to you with those values. And by the way, if you market the job properly, people are really excited to apply for the job because they see themselves in the core values that you're promoting. And they want to work at a place like that they're looking for that. And we've had so many people apply for jobs that say, I wasn't even in the market for a job, or it's been 10 years since I applied for another job, but I just read your job listing and it really spoke to me. And I just had to find out more about this. And so we've really been able to attract some great people that way. But our journey to core values, again, just like the culture issue, wasn't straightforward and wasn't simple. When we started our firm, I had, again, read some business books, understood that there's a thing called core values. That's probably a good thing to have some. And so at an early retreat, maybe our first annual retreat, we had all the attorneys and staff. At that time, we probably had, 6 people in the firm. We did a brainstorming session where the idea was to come up with sort of traits of the kind of people, the positive traits that we'd be looking for. And so, we had whiteboards and we wrote a lot of different traits, and there were things like hard work, integrity, compassion, empathy. And we filled the board with those list of traits. And then we, over the course of a couple hours, winnowed it down to 7 or 8 core, key traits. And so our original set of core values looked like that. Our core values are integrity, compassion, hard work, and so forth. And for 2 or 3 years, we returned regularly to that set of core values. We used those core values in evaluating our employees. But over time, what I realized is there were people in our firm that just weren't working out right. They didn't seem to fit in. They didn't seem to be aligned with our mission. And yet it was really hard to say, well, they don't have integrity, or they don't have compassion, and so forth. And after exploring the concept of core values further, what I realized is that the list of attributes really is not a core value, because the problem is if you just have a list of attributes, it's going to be the same list that every business in America is going to come up with, more or less, right? Every business wants somebody who works hard. Every business wants somebody who has integrity in theory, right? And compassion, empathy, so forth. What we decided was that the way we should go about really defining our core values is to decide as an entity, who do we really want here? And what are the characteristics of that person? And write it out as a full sentence, defining exactly what it is we're looking for. As if we were trying to hire somebody, and here are the things that are non-negotiable that we want and that we need for our firm. And so the list we came up with was a list like this. We go above and beyond for our clients and find a way to win where others cannot. We do not view work as a job. We view it as a mission and a calling to help wrongs for our clients. We make decisions based on science and data, not to make ourselves feel good or because we're afraid of the risks. We don't tolerate mediocrity or those who don't give their full effort to the mission. We work with sense of urgency. We don't take ourselves that seriously, but we take our work seriously. And we recognize that preserving our physical and mental ability to manage workload, pressure, stress, is an integral part of our business model and therefore place a premium on personal improvement, personal time, opportunity to reflect, exercise, and other forms of personal and professional growth and development. So those are actually real things we're looking for. And we then boiled that down into a set of what are our current core values. I'll just share what they are. So number one is sacrifice. We make sacrifices for opportunities and success. That's core value number one. Number two, science and data. We make decisions based on science and data, not fear or ego. Next core value, relentless curiosity and drive to win. We have a relentless curiosity and drive to win. Calculated urgency. We work with calculated urgency. And the last one, personal and professional growth. We value personal and professional growth. It's not enough to just create a list of core values. They're only useful if you actually translate them into operations and execution on the ground in your firm. And so the way we do that, first of all, whenever we go out to hire, the core values are front and center in our job posting. And we explicitly state that we hire only people who share our core values, and we list out those core values. So if you want somebody who has relentless curiosity and drive to win, you don't hire somebody who doesn't have it and train them. You hire somebody who already has it, or somebody who's going to work with a sense of urgency. Frankly, the sense of urgency was one of the big ones that crystallized this, because we recognized we had people that just weren't working with urgency. And we need to work with urgency. I mean, our clients and our firm depend on us moving things with a sense of, I'm getting exercised about it, even talking about it now, but because we need to move shit along. I mean, that's a big part of what we do here, right? So there's that. We also, that is our Monday morning meetings that are all staff every week. Part of the initial check-in is to go around and talk about ways in which we are meeting our core values. And often people will shout out somebody else in the firm who's done something that meets those core values. Sacrifice for opportunities. I mean, we have people, if we go into trial, they're working around the clock. We have staff that are traveling to other states for weeks at a time. We have people coming in on weekends. The fact is that this isn't a 9-to-5 job. If you want a 9-to-5 job, punching a clock, getting in or out because you value your time and your lifestyle more than our mission, that's great. I mean, I'm not quarreling with that approach to life, but you don't fit into our firm. You don't share our core values. Not that, everybody needs to do that every day, but when the bell tolls, you have to show up, right? Personal and professional growth. We want people that want to be better tomorrow than they are today. We want people that are, many of our staff, we've funded trips to get continuing education. We've funded additional college level courses so they can learn more things. We have, people are constantly trying to work, improve, and that's both their professional life and personal life. So on. And we just, in our employee reviews, every employee is reviewed on the core values. If you're not meeting multiple core values over multiple review periods, you're probably not going to survive here in the long term. So, and it's because of the nexus between our better defined core values, our integration of those core values into everything we do, I think that's allowed us to create the kind of culture that we have today and that you were just talking about, Jeff. And I'll give you the last words on all this.
Yeah, and I think the biggest mistakes that companies and businesses and firms make is they'll put together a strategic plan, they'll put together core values, they discuss it at an annual retreat, everyone's rah, 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 and then it gets put in a drawer, it's not revisited. To Ben's point, we keep it front and center. It's the crux of our Monday morning meetings with all staff. Every Monday we discuss our core values. It's the crux of our hiring. And when we interview somebody, as much as we talk about, okay, they don't have med mal, they don't have personal injury experience, but they have gone to trial, they have taken depositions, that's all part of the conversation. But it's also, do they meet our core values? Do they fit the culture that we're building? Will they be a disruption to that culture, or will they enhance it? And they could have the best skill set on the planet on paper and in person, but if they're going to be a detriment to our culture, we don't want them here. And I think the other thing that keeping the core values front of mind and making sure it's not lip service is we're raising the bar. Our expectations are out there for everybody on a daily basis, and everyone knows what we're expecting. And don't be afraid to raise the bar at your firm. Don't be afraid to expect more. But what you have to do is lead by example. And if you're raising the bar for yourself, it's going to get raised for everybody else. And those that aren't up to the task, you need to possibly move forward from them and make the tough decision, short-term pain for a much better long-term solution for your firm.
Yeah, well stated, Jeff. If you do a good job defining your core values and then go back to that, I mean, when we have a really hard decision, we've had some recently I can think of, and we don't need to talk about them right here, but it is such a critical part of helping you make those decisions, because, I mean, we will be in the middle of it making a decision and realize, wait a minute, we don't have the science and data to support this. Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, we're doing it because we're feeling insecure right now. That's basing a decision on fear, or we're doing it because it makes us feel good. Well, that's making a decision based on ego. But our core value is to make decisions on science and data, not fear and ego, right? So that's a great time to remind yourself that you're departing from your values and you need to go back and, take a step backward. And you can do that just across the board on every major issue you confront. You use those, view it through the prism of your core values, you're going to stay on course if you've created a good set to begin with. So I guess we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining in. We'll look forward to our discussion next time.
All right, Ben. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Elevate, Build and Grow Your Law Firm. Share with colleagues if you found it valuable. Remember, building a successful law firm takes discipline, strategy, and determination. But you're not alone. Produced and powered by LawPods.